The cameras captured elegance first. The carefully tailored coat, the composed smile, the familiar royal wave. But beneath the polished images of Catherine, Princess of Wales stepping onto Italian, soil was something far more fragile and far more powerful. Because this was not just another royal tour. For the first time since publicly revealing her cancer diagnosis and later announcing her remission, Catherine was returning to the international stage. And suddenly, every appearance carried a different emotional weight. Every gesture felt studied, measured, symbolic. Italy, too, was not an accidental choice. A country associated with art, rebirth, restoration, and history becoming timeless again. In many ways, the setting mirrored Catherine herself, a woman re-emerging into public life after one of the most private battles imaginable. But what made this tour truly fascinating wasn't simply her return. It was the focus she chose. Childhood development, emotional foundations, early years, subjects that on the surface seemed soft and gentle. Yet underneath them sat a much deeper message about healing, legacy, and the future of the monarchy itself. And that raised a larger question. Why did this particular tour matter so much? Not just for Catherine, but for the institution she represents. What made Catherine's return feel different was that she did not come back through spectacle. There were no grand declarations, no emotionally charged interviews, no attempt to transform personal illness into public theater. Instead, Catherine, Princess of Wales, returned through purpose. And that choice revealed everything. Rather than centering her comeback around ceremonial appearances alone, she leaned into the work that has quietly defined her royal identity for years. Early childhood development through the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood, a project built on the belief that emotional security in the earliest years shapes entire lifetimes. But this is where things changed emotionally. After her health battle, that mission no longer felt like a policy interest. It felt personal, almost protective. The image emerging from this tour was no longer simply that of a future queen. It was the image of a mother who had confronted vulnerability firsthand and returned with an even deeper understanding of care, stability, and emotional resilience. And for the modern monarchy, that matters enormously. If the return itself was meaningful, the choice of Italy as the setting was even more deliberate. In particular, Reggio Emilia, a city globally recognized for its progressive approach to early childhood. Education carries a philosophy that sees children not as passive learners, but as active participants in shaping their own development. It is a system built on curiosity, creativity, and emotional intelligence rather than rigid instruction, and that is where the symbolism deepens. For Catherine, Princess of Wales, this was not a tour designed for passive visibility. It was a moment of learning, listening, and quiet alignment with ideas that reflect her long-term mission through early years advocacy. But this is where things changed in tone. Instead of the traditional royal tour format, ribbon cuttings, staged appearances, predictable protocol, the focus shifted towards substance. Engagements were structured around exchange, not display. Observation, not performance. What made this especially significant is how it reflects a broader shift in modern monarchy strategy. Influence is no longer sustained by ceremony alone. It is sustained by credibility, by being seen engaging with real-world systems that matter beyond palace walls. In that sense, Italy was not just a destination. It was a statement, a carefully chosen first chapter in a longer narrative about education, empathy, and a monarchy learning to speak the language of relevance through purpose, not pageantry inside Kensington Palace. The tone around this visit was not one of obligation, but of emotional recalibration. Reports surrounding Catherine, Princess of Wales, described a striking internal shift. She was said to feel energized, enthused, and excited about re-engaging with public life. After months defined by privacy, treatment, and recovery, that language signals something important, not just physical recovery, but psychological re-entry into a role built on constant visibility. But this transition is rarely simple. For anyone returning from a serious health crisis, the weight of public expectation does not disappear. It intensifies. Every appearance becomes symbolic. Every gesture is interpreted. Even silence carries meaning. And within that environment, support matters. It is understood that both Prince William, Prince of Wales, and King Charles III have backed this gradual return to international duties. recognizing the delicate balance between duty and well-being. But this is where the emotional layer deepens. Royal families do not just manage schedules, they manage symbolism. During periods of uncertainty, even a single overseas visit becomes a message about continuity, resilience, and stability. And in that sense, Catherine's return is not only personal, it is institutional reassurance, carefully staged, deeply human, and quietly powerful. Behind the polished protocol and carefully managed appearances, there is a role that shapes everything else for Catherine, Princess of Wales more than any title ever could: motherhood. Raising Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis has quietly influenced how she sees the world. Not in abstract terms, but in the everyday reality of emotional development, stability, and the subtle foundations that shape a child's entire future. And that is exactly why early childhood development is not just a royal initiative for her. It feels personal, almost instinctive, a continuation of what she has observed, protected, and prioritized within her own family life. But this is where the emotional duality becomes striking. She is both a future queen and a present mother as navigating the expectations of an institution while still grounded in the instincts of care, protection, and emotional awareness that define parenting at its core. Modern audiences respond strongly to this balance. Distance and formality no longer create admiration on their own. Relatability does. Emotional intelligence does. The sense that leadership is not detached from lived experience. In that sense, Catherine is not just performing royal duty. She is quietly reshaping what future queenship might look like, less about inherited distance, and more about emotionally grounded connection. When viewed in isolation, Catherine's appearances might seem understated, measured, even quiet. But when seen as a pattern, something far more strategic becomes visible in Catherine, Princess of Wales, and how she is shaping modern royal identity. Her influence does not rely on volume. It relies on restraint, on symbolism, on emotional steadiness that allows meaning to emerge without force. And interestingly, her recovery narrative has not diminished her presence. It has deepened it. What could have been a moment of absence has instead become a framework for connection. People do not only see a royal figure returning to duty, they see resilience translated into action. But this is where the shift becomes larger than one individual. The monarchy itself has been gradually moving from authority-based perception toward emotional relatability, not abandoning tradition, but reinterpreting it through human experience. In that context, Catherine represents a new kind of public strength. Not loud authority, not dramatic declaration, but controlled visibility, where presence is carefully chosen and meaning is intentionally shaped. Audiences today are increasingly drawn to this kind of quiet resilience. It feels more authentic than spectacle, more psychologically grounded than grandeur. And compared to the old model of royal power, defined by distance, formality, and ceremonial weight, this approach feels almost inverted.